Hi. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to take us through something that we shared in the church meeting, as I record this, last Sunday in November, where we talked about our charitable status as a church and some changes that the trustees are proposing. It comes really out of some work the charity commissioners have been doing over the last 20 or so years. They've been encouraging churches as individual churches to register as charities. So from the beginning of the 2000s they were doing that. By the mid-2000s they were requesting churches that had a certain income threshold to register individually. Until that time, churches have been what were called accepted organisations. They could behave like charities and had the benefits of charities without needing to register as a charity themselves. But then the law changed and churches started to be required to do that. And Woodford Baptist Church became a charity, what we call an unincorporated charity, in 2010. We're going to look at that, and that's the subject of this video, something that we talked about in the church meeting, a process I want to outline to you that's going to take us some time over the next couple of years just to go through and to revisit some of that. So today I want to talk a little bit about the charitable status, what it means, some of the benefits, and what it is that the trustees are proposing to us. So we are a charity, and it's good that we are. There are some real benefits to us in being a charity. Firstly, there are some financial benefits. We get to use the government's gift aid scheme, for example, which means that people's giving can grow if they are a UK taxpayer by 20%, something like that, or a higher rate taxpayer gives a higher rate, just by filling in the form. And one of the delights over the last few years, the last year especially, has been the number of people who are part of our church family who give to the Lord and give to the church, and have done that more recently in a gift-aided way. It's been a real blessing to see a number of people move to that. If you are a UK taxpayer and you haven't done that yet, can I ask you to prayerfully consider that? It means that what you've paid in tax on that money, we can claim back, and it's at no cost to you, but it means that your giving can increase. So there's some financial benefits, and there's other tax breaks and things that we occasionally get. There's also a reputational benefit. Because we're registered with the charity commissioners, that means that we're open to the scrutiny of another body, a public body, a body that oversees the work of charities. There is some kind of credibility given to us because we've been able to register with them. So we, at the moment, are what is called an unincorporated charity, and broadly speaking, there are two kinds of charities. There are unincorporated charities and incorporated charities. What do I mean? Well, look at the middle of that word, corp. That word corp means body. And when something becomes incorporated, or to describe something as unincorporated, the corpe means body. It means that it has a legal identity. It is a legal thing. Currently we are an unincorporated charity, which means that we are like an association that gathers together, and everything that we do, although some things may have the church's name on it, ultimately are done in the name of the trustees and individual trustees. And so when the trustees change, some of those documents need to change every time, because the church itself doesn't have like a legal identity. But you can do that by incorporating. And there are two kinds of incorporated charities that we want to think about that might be suitable for us. The first is a charitable company, limited by guarantee. That is especially for a charity that does a lot of trading and does a lot of its fundraising through trading and is heavily invested in fundraising in that way. Not something that we are, but if, for example, we were the kind of charity that sold calendars every year to raise money, or open charity shops to raise money, then we might be wanting to become a charitable company limited by guarantee. They report to the charity commissioners, but they also are registered with Companies House, and so they have to behave responsibly in both of those ways. There's this other body though that's relevant to us, and that is the Charitably incorporated organisation. So it's a charity, it's an organisation, it's running, it's doing its work, but it incorporates. Which means that it becomes a legal entity in and of itself. The charity commissioners have worked with the Baptist Union and with a number of other agencies to produce what we call model governing documents, which are like the paperwork for these kinds of charities that have already been pre-agreed. So basically you can get a document and there's the gaps in for your name, for your details, and some spaces where you make a choice out of a number of limited options that suit the situation that you are in. So at the moment, back in 2010, when Woodford Baptist Church was encouraged to become a charity, it did, but it became an unincorporated charity, which is fine if you're a smaller charity and you're not doing very much, but as the charity gets bigger, there are some benefits of incorporation that we needed to take a look at, the trustees have looked at, and think that's where we want to get to now. The first of these is that CIOs, charitably incorporated organisations, are legal entities. So they can enter into contracts, they can enter into partnerships, they can enter into financial arrangements. Things can be done in the charity's name. And so instead of it being in the like using the charity's name, but it being the trustees of the charity, it becomes the charity itself that's able to do these things. It can, for example, hold property, which is helpful because at the moment, if a church that is unincorporated holds property, it's held in the name of several trustees. Whenever there's a trustee change, all that paperwork and all that registration needs to be revisited. With a CIO, it's all done in the church's name. Now, we are registered as trustees, and the company and charities commissioners know who we are, and trustees have to be doing their jobs well. But ultimately, this new legal identity is able to do stuff and in fact bear liability and hold assets in its own name. So because of that, it's one of the reasons we want to think about becoming a CIO. CIO has a constitution like all charities have, but they're a little easier to amend, which means that if our situation changes and something happens in the future and we need to alter part of our charity, it's a much easier and a sort of shorter process than the one that we're currently in when we have the unincorporated charity. In the same way that we said earlier, there's like a reputational benefit in becoming a charity. In becoming incorporated, there's an even greater one, and it gives confidence to other partners who might want to work with us, even some donors who will only give to incorporated bodies. And that's because the level of scrutiny, the level of organisation, the fact that this thing is incorporated and it owns that gift or it owns that partnership in its own name means so much to some people. And then finally, and this is not unimportant, but isn't the most important thing, it limits the trustees' liability, and in fact the whole church's. If the church went belly up tomorrow, it would be up to the trustees and their own resources to pay off any bills that were left remaining, and in fact the church too, if you remember. But if we become incorporated, then all of both the assets and the liabilities exist in this new legal identity, which would be Woodford Baptist Church. So how does one become a CIO? Well, this charitably incorporated organisation has, as I said earlier, a model CIO constitution that the Baptist Union have worked with the charity commissioners on, and so we've got a copy of that, and for the last little while the trustees have been working with that. First of all, a subcommittee, and then the whole of the trustees taking a look at that model deed, and then working with that so that we can bring to you today something where we're up to now, kind of an update now, so that we can guide us through the process of the next few months. What the charity trustees have done first is they've taken a look at our current trust deeds, our current unincorporated charity governing document, and where there is a direct alignment, we've just transferred those things straight over into the new model where there's a possibility. That hasn't always been possible to do, and so together as a whole church in church meetings, and I'll give you the dates and some sense of the timescale, we will together choose some options where there is a multiple choice. And those could be things like, I don't know, it could be how many people we need to have to be able to run a meeting and to be quora, how often those meetings are. There's a number of decisions that we need to take where the model document presents us with multiple choices. We just have to pick one. All those choices have been pre-approved. Now, here's the thing I want you to be aware that we can make other changes to that model document, and when you see it next year, it may be that you see something and think that something's really missing that's so important it should be in there. And if together as a whole church we felt that, then we could make some other changes, but, and here's the but, it would mean that that document we're using is no longer the model CIO constitution, and the commissioners then may refuse that, they may request further information, they may ask us to rewrite parts of it, which would incur delay and cost, because we would need the help of lawyers if we got to that place. So we're a charity already. We want to change the kind of charity we are. We want to become a charitably incorporated organisation, have the benefits of incorporation. So how long is all that going to take? Well, we think it could look something a little bit like this. Where are we at now? We're at that stage in this year, in summer and in autumn, where the trustees have been looking at the constitution for the CIO, and then where there are options, they've been deciding what options they want to recommend to the church, but it's going to be the church that makes the decision. Last weekend, we introduced the church to the need to update the constitution. We outlined this process. That's where we are right now in this PowerPoint. And then in March next year, in the same way that before the church meeting you get papers circulated, members will be circulated with the draft governing document. It's a thick old thing. There's a lot in there. So we might try and get it to you a week or two earlier than we might ordinarily get papers to you, to give you a chance to have a look through it. We're not going to deal with it all in one go. In the March church meeting, we'll send you that paperwork, and we'll also send you a list of the first set of the options that we want to focus on and have a look at. We'll have a second go in June, in our church meeting in June, and then hopefully that should do it. There's a list of decisions we need to make. Hopefully we'll have time to get through them. If we need an extra one, then we'll take an extra one, and here's where the timescale just gets a little bit flexible. We don't want to rush it. We want to do it thoroughly, not just quickly. Well, whenever we agree the draft of the Constitution, which could be in the September time, that will take us to the point where we've got a copy, we've agreed on the decisions, and it becomes a draft. At this point, we will send the Constitution to some solicitors, and we will incur costs now. We're going to use some charity specialist lawyers, and they'll look over all of our documents just to make sure that we haven't made any errors, and then if there are any amendments or any advice they want to give to us, they'll send that back to us. Hopefully, we think if we get it to them in September, hopefully by the end of October, we'll have that advice back from them. In the light of that, in our November church meeting next year, look at the timescale here, it might be in March, depending on how well we're doing, really, and the timescale of things, but then we would discuss any amendments that are given to us, if there are any, and if there aren't, and if we do agree amendments, then we'll agree a final draft, either in November next year or March the following year. At that point, a couple of things are going to happen in tandem. The charity commissioners will receive then our copy of this document for them to make the decision. At the same time, we will be instructing some solicitors to make sure that all of our assets and liabilities are transferred properly into the new structure, into the CIO. And that, again, will incur costs for us. But we need lawyers to make sure that happens, because if we don't do this properly, we could get ourselves in a little bit of a pickle. We might accidentally close the church, for example, which is something we don't really want to do. So we'll have some solicitors that will take care of that for us and make sure that there is a continuation of what exists before, that although the charity was unincorporated, it's becoming incorporated. That process isn't the stopping and the ending of a church and the beginning of a new one. It's a continuation in a different structure, that's all. So we need some help to do that. Our expectation is if we meet that timeline and get this off to the charity commissioners in March, then maybe then in April we'll be receiving a response from them, which could be, fine, go ahead, set the date and make the decision, and you have permission to do that. Or it may be that they need to make some changes, and so we'll be flexible at the end time. But that's the kind of process that we're going to be going through over the next couple of years, really, a year and a half at least. That's why we're doing it, and we want you to be informed. So what do you need to do now? Well, praying is good, but really we just want you to be aware so that when this thing drops in your lap in March next year into your inbox, or you can request a print copy if that's helpful for you, we can let you have that either on, a print copy or in your email, then you'll be aware of what's happening and what to do with it. Keep praying and come ready in March to start making these decisions together. God bless you.